Welcome back, dear traveler, to the sanctuary of psychological understanding and peaceful rest. Whether you return after one night's sleep or many, you are welcomed here with the same gentle patience, the same soothing presence that greeted you before. Tonight, we continue our journey through the remaining truths of mind and consciousness, exploring 45 more territories of human experience and scientific understanding. Each fact will be delivered with the same slow rhythm, the same calming tone, the same invitation to release and rest. Settle yourself comfortably once more. Let your breathing deepen. Allow your eyes to grow heavy as we resume our exploration together, patient as the turning of stars. Long before written words, before recorded history, before cities or agriculture, or tools more sophisticated than sharpened stones, humans were speaking to each other. Language emerged gradually, across tens of thousands of years, building on communication systems inherited from primate ancestors, shaped by the unique demands of human social life, and refined through countless generations of use. The capacity for language is written into the structure of your brain, encoded in specialized neural circuits that develop automatically during childhood, enabling you to perform the extraordinary feat of converting thoughts into sounds and sounds back into thoughts, bridging the gap between separate minds. The universality of language is striking. Every human culture, no matter how isolated or technologically simple, has developed a complete language system capable of expressing complex thoughts, subtle emotions, and abstract concepts. No one has ever discovered a group of humans who communicate only through gestures or who lack grammatical structure in their speech. This universality suggests that language capacity is part of human biological inheritance, that the brain is specialized for language in the same way that eyes are specialized for vision or wings are specialized for flight. Children acquire language with remarkable ease without explicit instruction, simply by being exposed to language in their environment. By age 4, most children have mastered the basic grammar of their native language, can produce and understand thousands of words, and can create novel sentences they've never heard before. This acquisition happens through pattern detection. Children unconsciously extract the regularities in the speech they hear, figuring out which sounds form words, which word sequences are grammatical, and which meanings correspond to which expressions. The process is so automatic, so natural, that children are unaware they're doing anything remarkable. They're not consciously learning rules, they're absorbing a system, becoming fluent through immersion. Yet language is not just a tool for communication, it also shapes thought itself. The words available in your language influence what you notice, what distinctions you make, and what concepts come easily to mind. Some languages have dozens of words for different types of snow, enabling speakers to make fine discriminations that would be difficult without the vocabulary. Some languages have no words for specific colors, and speakers of these languages show different patterns in color perception and memory. Some languages grammatically encode the source of knowledge, whether you witnessed something directly, heard about it from others, or inferred it, forcing speakers to constantly track and communicate epistemic certainty. These linguistic differences correlate with differences in thought patterns, attention, and memory, suggesting that language doesn't just express thoughts, but participates in creating them. The evolution of language remains mysterious in many respects. Unlike other human abilities that have clear precursors in other species, language seems qualitatively different from animal communication systems. Other species communicate. Bees dance to share the location of flowers, birds sing to attract mates and defend territory, and primates have alarm calls distinguishing different predators. But these systems are limited, tied to immediate circumstances, lacking the unlimited generativity of human language, the ability to discuss things remote in time and space, to communicate about abstract concepts, to create new meanings by combining elements in novel ways. Some researchers propose that language evolved gradually, building on existing communication systems through small, incremental changes. Others suggest a more punctuated evolution, with crucial genetic changes creating sudden leaps in capacity. The archaeological record offers tantalizing hints. Tools become more sophisticated at certain points in time, suggesting more complex thought and possibly more sophisticated communication. Cave paintings appear, demonstrating symbolic thinking, but speech itself leaves no fossil trace, no direct evidence, only inferences drawn from skull shape and tool complexity and artistic expression. Tonight, as language fades with the onset of sleep, as words become less necessary and less available, notice the quality of consciousness that remains. Before language, in the first year or two of life, you experience the world wordlessly, pure sensation, raw emotion, pre-verbal understanding. In sleep, especially in the deeper stages, this pre-verbal consciousness returns. Dreams sometimes include language, but more often they're wordless, pure imagery and sensation and emotion flowing without names, without categories, without the structure that language imposes. This dissolution of language is not a loss, but a return, a nightly reminder that consciousness doesn't require words. That experience precedes and exceeds language's ability to capture it. Let words fall away now. Let the voice in your head grow quiet, the internal narrator that constantly describes and analyzes and judges. Rest in the space before words, the awareness that doesn't need language to exist, that was there before you learned to speak and will remain after speech has ceased. Breathe into wordless presence and let your eyes grow heavy, releasing the burden of naming, of categorizing, of translating experience into language. Let silence speak, patient and profound, in a world that celebrates certainty, that rewards confident assertions and clear answers. Uncertainty is often treated as weakness, as something to overcome or eliminate. Yet psychology reveals a different truth. The ability to tolerate uncertainty, to remain comfortable with not knowing, is actually a mark of psychological maturity and a source of mental health. Those who can embrace ambiguity, who can hold questions without immediately demanding answers, who can acknowledge the limits of their knowledge without anxiety, tend to be more flexible, more creative, more capable of navigating complex situations where simple certainties don't apply. The human mind has a powerful drive to create certainty where ambiguity exists, to find patterns even in random data, to construct explanations for phenomena not yet understood. This drive served our ancestors well. Better to mistakenly see patterns that aren't there than to miss patterns that are. Better to have a probably wrong explanation than no explanation at all when decisions must be made with limited information. But this same drive can lead to premature closure, to accepting inadequate answers simply because they relieve the discomfort of not knowing, to defending beliefs long after evidence has undermined them because uncertainty feels more threatening than maintaining a potentially false certainty. Research on personality traits has identified intolerance of uncertainty as a key factor in anxiety disorders. People high in this trait find ambiguous situations extremely uncomfortable, experience them as threatening, and feel compelled to resolve uncertainty even when doing so is premature or impossible. This intolerance drives excessive worry. Worrying is an attempt to achieve certainty about the future, to anticipate and prepare for all possible negative outcomes, to eliminate the uncertainty of not knowing what will happen. But the future is inherently uncertain, fundamentally unknowable in its details, and no amount of worry can change this fact. The worry becomes suffering, added to uncertainty rather than a solution to it. Conversely, those who can tolerate uncertainty show greater psychological resilience. They can make decisions despite imperfect information, can act without knowing outcomes in advance, and can hold multiple possibilities simultaneously without needing to collapse them into a single, certain answer. This tolerance allows for exploration, for trying new approaches, for learning from experience rather than clinging to preconceived notions. It creates mental flexibility, the ability to update beliefs when new evidence appears, to change course when circumstances shift, to recognize that certainty is often provisional, always partial, never as complete as it feels. The scientific method itself is built on embracing uncertainty, on acknowledging what's not yet known, on holding hypotheses tentatively while gathering evidence. Science progresses not through increasing certainty, but through increasingly precise understanding of uncertainty, through better questions rather than final answers, through provisional models that will inevitably be refined or replaced. The greatest scientists are often those most comfortable saying, "I don't know," most willing to question their own assumptions, most open to surprise and anomaly. Spiritual and contemplative traditions often point toward a deeper uncertainty, the recognition that the nature of reality, consciousness, self, existence itself remains ultimately mysterious, that the intellectual mind's categories and concepts never fully capture the living truth of direct experience. This recognition can be unsettling or liberating, depending on whether you meet it with resistance or acceptance. Resisted, it generates existential anxiety, the sense that nothing is secure, that meaning is arbitrary, that all ground is shifting. Accepted, it generates wonder, humility, a sense of participating in something vast and mysterious, of being held by a reality larger than understanding can compass. Tonight, as you lie in darkness, practice tolerating uncertainty. You don't know exactly when you'll fall asleep. You can't force it or precisely control it. You don't know what you'll dream or whether you'll remember dreams upon waking. You don't know what tomorrow will bring, what challenges or opportunities will arise, or how the story of your life will unfold. All of this is uncertain, unknown, and beyond your capacity to determine in advance. Let this uncertainty be okay. Let not knowing be a space to rest in rather than a problem to solve. Trust that you don't need to know everything, don't need to have all answers, don't need certainty to rest, to sleep, to allow life to carry you forward into whatever comes next. Breathe into the unknown and let your eyes gray heavy, releasing the grip of certainty, surrendering to the mystery that precedes and follows and pervades all knowing. The universe has been unfolding for billions of years without requiring your understanding or approval, and it will continue regardless of how much you know or don't know. Rest in this larger movement, patient and profound, and let certainty dissolve like salt in water, weaving only presence, only breath, only this moment's gentle invitation into sleep. Your heart beats constantly, a rhythm so fundamental that it usually escapes conscious attention, noticed only when something seems wrong, or when you deliberately direct awareness toward it. Yet this rhythm is not mechanical or fixed, but constantly varying, speeding and slowing in response to countless influences: breath, emotion, thought, movement, rest. This variability, called heart rate variability or HRV, is not a flaw or inconsistency, but a sign of health, an indication that your cardiovascular system is flexible and responsive, capable of adapting quickly to changing demands. A healthy heart dances, its rhythm fluid and complex, while a rigid, unvarying heartbeat paradoxically signals problems rather than reliability. The regulation of heartbeat involves intricate communication between the heart, the brain, and the body. Your heart contains its own nervous system, a network of neurons capable of functioning independently of the brain, generating the basic rhythm of contraction without requiring external commands. But this intrinsic rhythm is constantly modulated by signals from the autonomic nervous system. The sympathetic branch accelerates the heart when you're active or stressed, while the parasympathetic branch slows it when you're resting or calm. The balance between these influences creates the moment-to-moment variation in rhythm, the subtle speeding and slowing that reflects your current physiological and psychological state. Breathing directly influences heart rate through a phenomenon called respiratory sinus arrhythmia. When you inhale, your heart rate naturally increases slightly. When you exhale, it decreases. This pattern reflects the mechanical effects of breathing on blood flow and the nervous system's coordination of these two vital rhythms. The strength of this coupling, how much heart rate varies with breath, serves as one measure of parasympathetic tone, of how well your calming system is functioning. People with strong respiratory sinus arrhythmia tend to have better emotional regulation, greater stress resilience, and healthier cardiovascular function. Emotions also manifest in heart rhythm. Anxiety and stress create irregular, chaotic heart rate patterns, with variations that look jagged and unpredictable when graphed. Positive emotions, like appreciation and contentment, create more coherent, harmonious patterns, with smooth, regular oscillations. These patterns, in turn, influence brain function. Coherent heart rhythms facilitate cognitive performance, emotional stability, and sense of well-being, while chaotic rhythms impair thinking and intensify negative emotions. The heart-brain communication is bidirectional, each influencing the other in continuous feedback loops. Interestingly, the heart sends more signals to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. 4 out of every 5 neural pathways in the vagus nerve, the major nerve connecting heart and brain, carry information upward from heart to brain rather than downward from brain to heart. The brain is constantly monitoring the heart, using cardiac signals to regulate emotional and cognitive processes. When you feel your heart racing during anxiety, the brain interprets this signal as confirmation of threat, amplifying anxiety. When you feel your heart slow during relaxation, the brain interprets this as safety, facilitating calm. This is why interventions that directly change heart rhythm through breathing exercises, through biofeedback, through meditation, can effectively modify emotional states. By changing the body's signals, you change how the brain interprets the current situation, creating bottom-up shifts in psychological state that complement top-down cognitive approaches. Throughout history, cultures have intuited the heart's connection to emotion and consciousness. Speaking of heartbreak and heartache, of following your heart, of knowing something in your heart, of being wholehearted or heartless. Modern science confirms that these metaphors capture something real. The heart is not just a pump, but an intelligent organ, a participant in emotional experience, a source of information that shapes consciousness. The ancient wisdom that placed importance on the heart was not naive or mistaken, but recognized, perhaps without fully understanding the mechanisms, the genuine connection between cardiac function and psychological state. As you rest here tonight, bring gentle awareness to your heartbeat. You might place a hand on your chest, feeling the rhythmic pulse beneath your palm, or simply notice the sensation of pulse in your body, in your neck, your wrists, your fingertips. Don't try to control or change the rhythm. Simply observe it with curiosity and acceptance. Notice how it shifts with your breath. Slightly faster on the inhale, slightly slower on the exhale. Notice how it gradually slows as you relax, as your parasympathetic nervous system increasingly predominates, preparing your body for sleep. This heart has been beating since before you were born, since you were a tiny embryo barely distinguishable from other mammals, since the first flutter of cardiac cells organizing themselves into rhythm. It has beaten billions of times, will beat billions more, maintaining its faithful rhythm through sleep and waking, through every experience of your life, never stopping, never resting completely. It beats now without your conscious direction, without your effort, without requiring your attention or concern. Trust this ancient rhythm, this pulse that connects you to all living things, that began with the first creatures to develop hearts hundreds of millions of years ago. Patient and enduring. Let your breathing become slow and gentle, and notice how your heart responds, how the rhythm softens, how the variations become more regular and harmonious. This coherence between breath and heartbeat signals safety to your nervous system, facilitates the transition into sleep, tells your body at the deepest level that it's okay to let go, to release vigilance, to rest. Breathe, and let your heart's rhythm carry you like a lullaby, like waves lapping gently at the shore, like the eternal pulse of life itself. Let your eyes grow heavy, heavy as stone worn smooth by patient water, and rest in the music of your heartbeat, the hidden symphony that plays constantly, the rhythm of life itself. Around your body extends an invisible boundary, a zone that feels like yours, that others violate at their peril. This personal space, psychologists call it proxemics, varies in size depending on relationship, culture, situation, but it always exists, marking the territory where you feel safe, where intrusion triggers discomfort or alarm. Understanding personal space reveals how deeply spatial relationships shape social psychology, how proximity communicates meaning, how the physical distance between bodies reflects and creates psychological distance between minds. Edward T. Hall, the anthropologist who pioneered the study of personal space, identified 4 distinct zones in American culture. Intimate distance, from 0 to about 18 inches, is reserved for those closest to you. Romantic partners, family, dear friends. Only people you trust deeply are allowed into this space, and uninvited intrusion feels threatening, viscerally uncomfortable. Personal distance, from 18 inches to about 4 feet, is appropriate for friendly conversation, for comfortable interaction with people you know and like. Social distance, from 4 to 12 feet, suits more formal interactions, business conversations, casual acquaintances. Public distance, beyond 12 feet, applies to public speaking, to interactions where personal connection is minimal. These distances feel natural, almost instinctive, but they're actually learned, absorbed through countless social interactions during development, varying significantly across cultures. Mediterranean and Latin American cultures tend toward closer, comfortable distances, while Northern European and North American cultures prefer more space. What feels normal in one cultural context can feel invasive or distant in another, creating potential for misunderstanding when people from different backgrounds interact. The person standing too close may simply be following different norms, not deliberately invading, while the person backing away may be seeking normal distance, not rejecting connection. Personal space expands and contracts based on multiple factors. When you're anxious or uncomfortable, you want more space, larger buffers between yourself and others. When you're calm and secure, you can tolerate closer proximity. Status affects spacing too. High-status individuals often maintain larger personal space, approaching others freely, while others hesitate to approach them uninvited. Gender dynamics influence spacing, with men typically claiming larger personal space than women, though these patterns vary by culture and are changing as gender norms evolve. The violation of personal space triggers physiological responses. Stress hormones increase, heart rate elevates, muscles tense in preparation for fight or flight. This reaction happens automatically, below conscious awareness, reflecting the brain's assessment that boundaries have been crossed, that potential threat exists. Yet the same proximity can feel comforting rather than threatening when the person is trusted, when touch is welcome. The physical distance is the same, but the meaning differs completely based on relationship and context. People seem to maintain personal space around their belongings as well as their bodies, treating objects as extensions of self. A coat draped over a chair creates a larger exclusion zone than an empty chair. A bag placed on an adjacent seat communicates, "This space is taken," even when no body occupies it. These territorial markers are respected most of the time, with others hesitating to remove objects or sit in marked spaces unless necessity outweighs social convention. The pandemic of the early 2020s dramatically altered cultural norms around personal space, with social distancing becoming a health imperative rather than just a psychological preference. 6 feet of separation, greater than normal social distance, became expected even with friends and family. Masks created additional barriers, hiding facial expressions that normally facilitate connection. These changes may have lasting effects on how comfortable proximity feels, on what distances seem normal, on the boundaries people maintain between self and other. Tonight, in the solitude of your bed, personal space becomes less relevant. There's no one to maintain distance from, no boundaries to defend, no territories to mark. Your body can spread out, claim space without concern, occupy whatever area feels comfortable without negotiating with others. This freedom from social spacing is part of what makes sleep restorative. The nightly release from the constant spatial awareness that social life requires. The freedom to exist without monitoring proximity, without managing boundaries. Let your body settle into this unconstrained space, this territory that belongs entirely to you, where no intrusion is possible, where you can be completely unguarded. Breathe deeply and let your eyes grow heavy, releasing the vigilance that maintains boundaries, surrendering to the safety of solitude, patient and still. Mastery in any domain, whether music, sports, medicine, cooking, or countless other pursuits, develops slowly, gradually, through thousands of hours of deliberate practice extended across years or decades. There are no shortcuts to genuine expertise, no ways to bypass the patient accumulation of experience that transforms novice into expert, that builds the intuition and automaticity that characterize true skill. Understanding how expertise develops reveals both the enormous potential of human learning and the time and effort required to realize that potential, offering realism about what achievement requires while celebrating what humans can ultimately accomplish. The psychologist K. Anders Ericsson spent decades studying expert performers across domains, trying to identify what distinguished the best from the merely good. His research revealed that raw talent, while real, matters far less than most people believe. What separates experts from others is not primarily innate ability, but the quantity and quality of practice they've accumulated. Erickson identified what he called deliberate practice that's focused on specific skills just beyond current ability, that involves immediate feedback on performance, that requires sustained concentration and effort. This type of practice, consistently applied over years, reliably produces expertise, while less focused practice, even if extensive, produces much smaller gains. The 10,000-hour rule, popularized by Malcolm Gladwell, emerged from Erickson's research, suggesting that roughly 10,000 hours of deliberate practice are needed to achieve world-class expertise in most domains. This translates to about 10 years of full-time dedication or 20 years of half-time commitment. The specific number varies by domain and shouldn't be taken as exact, but the general principle holds. Expertise requires massive amounts of practice, extended over long periods. There are no overnight successes, despite what stories sometimes suggest. When someone appears to achieve mastery quickly, closer examination almost always reveals years of prior preparation that wasn't visible to observers. What happens during all this practice? Initially, performing any new skill requires enormous conscious effort and attention. Every movement must be deliberately controlled, every decision consciously made. Performance is slow, error-prone, exhausting, but gradually with repetition, the skill becomes more automatic, more fluid, requiring less conscious attention and effort. Neural pathways strengthen, patterns become established, and what once required step-by-step conscious control happens increasingly without thought. Eventually, experts perform their skill almost unconsciously, leaving conscious attention free to focus on higher-level strategy, creative expression, subtle refinements that novices don't yet perceive. This automaticity comes with trade-offs. Experts sometimes struggle to explain what they're doing because so much happens below conscious awareness. They can demonstrate their skill brilliantly, but find it difficult to articulate the principles guiding their performance. They just know what to do, responding to subtle cues that they don't consciously register, executing complex actions that they can't decompose into steps. This is why teaching is itself a skill separate from doing. Being expert doesn't automatically make you capable of explaining expertise to others. Expertise also creates both advantages and limitations in perception. Experts see patterns that novices miss, notice subtle details that others overlook, instantly recognize situations they've encountered before. A chess master glances at a board and immediately sees the strategic implications, while a novice sees only individual pieces. A radiologist spots the tiny shadow indicating cancer that others miss. A musician hears the slightly flat note that non-musicians don't notice. But experts can also become blind to possibilities outside their training, locked into seeing things in particular ways, less open to alternative approaches than novices who haven't yet learned what's supposed to work. The development of expertise is humbling and encouraging simultaneously. Humbling because it reveals that achievement requires sustained effort over long periods, that there are no quick paths to mastery, that even prodigies practice extensively. Encouraging because it demonstrates that almost anyone can develop high levels of skill through patient application, that talent is less determining than persistence, that the capacity for learning and improvement remains throughout life, not limited to childhood or youth. As you rest tonight, reflect on expertise you've developed across your lifetime. Perhaps you're expert at nothing famous or celebrated, but consider how much you've learned since infancy: language, social navigation, countless practical skills, understanding of how the world works. Each capability you now take for granted required extensive learning, countless repetitions, gradual accumulation of skill. The expertise of simply being an adult human, navigating daily life competently, represents thousands of hours of learning, even if you've never tracked or celebrated this development. Appreciate this accumulated wisdom, this slow building of capability, patient as stone forming layer by layer across eons. Let your eyes grow heavy now, knowing that learning continues even in sleep, that expertise keeps developing through rest and consolidation, that tomorrow you'll wake slightly different from today, subtly changed by experience, gradually becoming more capable, more skilled, more wise. Rest in the knowledge that growth is patient, that mastery unfolds slowly, that time itself is the great teacher, asking only that you remain present, remain engaged, remain willing to learn. Breathe deeply and surrender to sleep, trusting the slow accumulation of understanding. We return now like a river circling back toward its source, to the theme of routine, but from a different angle, a deeper perspective. Earlier we explored how habits form, how repetition creates neural pathways, how routine conserves mental energy. Now we consider routine's emotional and existential dimensions, how the predictable rhythms of daily life provide psychological shelter in an uncertain world, how small repeated actions become anchors for identity, how the mundane patterns of existence carry meaning that transcends their practical utility. In times of crisis, chaos, or grief, people often cling to routine as a lifeline. They continue making morning coffee in the same way, continue the bedtime ritual even when sleep seems impossible, continue small habits even when larger meaning has collapsed. This clinging is not denial or avoidance, but wisdom. Routine provides structure when everything else feels formless, offers small certainties when everything else feels uncertain, maintains continuity when rupture threatens to destroy all coherence. The familiar movements, the repeated actions, the known sequences serve as proof that something endures, that not everything has changed, that the world still contains reliable patterns even when major disruptions have occurred. Anthropologists studying ritual across cultures note how ritual and routine overlap, how the repeated patterns of daily life take on ceremonial qualities, becoming not just practical actions but symbolic ones, meaningful beyond their instrumental purposes. The Japanese tea ceremony elevates routine actions, boiling water, preparing tea, drinking, into an art form, a meditation, a practice that embodies values and creates meaning. But even without formal ceremony, ordinary routines can carry similar weight. The way you make your bed each morning, the route you walk, the sequence of your evening wind-down, these can become rituals in the true sense, actions that connect you to something larger than mere efficiency, that ground you in continuity and meaning. Routines also mediate the relationship between self and time. Each repeated action creates a small marker, a waypoint that divides the formless flow of hours into recognizable segments. Morning routine marks the transition from sleep to waking, from private self to public self, from rest to activity. Evening routine marks the reverse transition, the gradual shedding of daily roles, the return to private space, the preparation for rest. Without these markers, time can feel amorphous, days bleeding into each other without distinction, creating the disorienting sense that life is passing without being fully lived, that you're somehow missing your own existence. Yet routine can also become prison if it's too rigid, too unvarying, too resistant to adaptation. The challenge is finding the balance, enough routine to provide structure and security, enough flexibility to allow spontaneity and growth. Some personality types naturally gravitate toward high routine, finding comfort in predictability, while others prefer more variation, feeling suffocated by too much structure. Neither preference is better. Both have advantages and costs. The key is knowing yourself, honoring your needs, creating routines that support rather than constrain you. Interestingly, creative people often maintain very structured routines in their personal lives, using routine to create stable foundations from which creative exploration can safely launch. The writer who writes at the same time each day in the same place, the artist who begins each session with the same preparatory ritual, the scientist who maintains strict daily schedules. These routines don't inhibit creativity but enable it, providing the structure within which creative freedom can flourish. When basic patterns are established and reliable, attention is freed for creative risk-taking, for venturing into unknown territories while knowing there's a stable base to return to. Your bedtime routine, whatever form it takes, serves this grounding function. Perhaps you brush your teeth, wash your face, arrange your pillows, dim the lights, small actions that signal the day's end, that tell your nervous system it's time to transition towards sleep. These actions may seem mundane, barely worthy of attention, but they're actually quite significant, creating the predictable sequence that facilitates letting go, that makes the descent into sleep smoother and more natural. Tonight, honor this routine, whatever it is. Perform each action with gentle awareness, recognizing its role in your well-being, appreciating how these small, repeated gestures serve you night after night, patient and reliable. Let your eyes grow heavy now, allowing the routine to carry you towards sleep as it has countless times before, as it will countless times to come. The reliability itself is comforting. You know this path, have walked it many times, can trust it to lead where you need to go. Breathe into the familiar and rest in the shelter of routine, patient as the seasons turning, enduring as stone. When injury occurs, whether physical trauma or psychological wound, healing follows patterns that unfold across days, weeks, months, sometimes years. There is no rushing this process, no shortcut that bypasses the slow work of tissue repair and emotional integration. Understanding how healing happens, what supports it, and what hinders it, brings patience to recovery. Acceptance of the timeline that biology and psychology require. Healing cannot be forced, only supported, only allowed to proceed at its own pace, patient as all natural processes. Physical healing follows predictable stages. First comes inflammation, redness, swelling, heat, pain, as the body rushes resources to the injury site, clearing debris, beginning repair. This inflammation, though uncomfortable, is necessary, essential to healing. Trying to suppress it completely often delays recovery. Next comes proliferation, new tissue forming, cells dividing and organizing, gradually filling the wound. Finally comes remodeling, the new tissue strengthening, maturing, gradually approaching the strength and function of original tissue. The timeline varies by injury type and individual factors, but the sequence is universal, built into the logic of biology itself. Psychological healing shows parallels. After trauma or loss, there's often an initial period of acute distress, the emotional equivalent of inflammation, when pain is intense, when functioning is impaired, when all resources focus on managing the immediate crisis. This acute phase is necessary, is your psyche's way of processing what happened, of beginning to integrate the experience. Trying to skip this phase, to immediately move on or stay positive, often backfires, leading to delayed or complicated grief, to symptoms that emerge later when suppression finally fails. Gradually, with time and support, the acute phase gives way to a period of integration, making meaning of what happened, adjusting to changed circumstances, learning to carry the experience without being overwhelmed by it. This middle phase is often the longest, requiring patience and sustained effort. Progress is not linear, but cyclical, with good days and bad days, with setbacks that can feel like starting over. But healing is occurring even when it's not obvious, even when it feels like nothing is changing. The work happens beneath conscious awareness, in the slow reshaping of neural networks, in the gradual accommodation of experience. Eventually, for most people and most wounds, comes a phase of resolution, not forgetting, not pretending the injury didn't happen, but integrating it into your life story in a way that allows forward movement. The wound becomes scar tissue, still visible, but no longer actively painful, a part of your history, but not the entirety of your identity. You carry what happened, but it no longer carries you. What supports healing? For physical wounds, rest, nutrition, protection from further injury, time. For psychological wounds, similar factors, rest, both physical and mental, good self-care and support from others, protection from re-traumatization, time. Both types of healing benefit from patience, from accepting the timeline rather than fighting it, from trusting that the body and mind know how to heal themselves when given proper conditions. What hinders healing? For physical wounds, continued stress on injured tissue, poor nutrition, inadequate rest, infection. For psychological wounds, similar factors, ongoing stress, isolation, self-criticism, exposure to triggers before you're ready. Both types of healing are impaired by the belief that you should be better faster, that taking time to heal means weakness, that requiring support means failure. The metaphor of healing extends even to ordinary psychological maintenance. Each day brings small stresses, minor injuries to your sense of self, tiny accumulations of frustration or disappointment or fatigue. Sleep provides the opportunity for these micro-injuries to heal, for emotional equilibrium to restore, for the baseline to reset. Without adequate sleep, these small wounds accumulate, never quite healing, eventually creating chronic psychological pain, even when no single major trauma has occurred. Tonight, as you rest, trust in healing processes unfolding at their own pace, responding to their own wisdom. Whether you're healing from specific injury or simply recovering from the day's minor stresses, the work proceeds in darkness, in stillness, according to principles older than consciousness. You don't need to direct this healing any more than you need to consciously direct your immune system or tissue repair. The ancient mechanisms will handle everything, will do the slow, patient work of restoration while you sleep. Let your eyes grow heavy and surrender to the healing darkness, knowing that you'll wake tomorrow, slightly more whole, slightly more restored, gradually recovering through the patient accumulation of rest, endless as the slow turning of seasons. Long before written records, before external storage could preserve knowledge across generations, humans developed extraordinary techniques for remembering vast amounts of information. One of the most powerful methods used by ancient Greek orators and medieval scholars involves transforming abstract information into vivid spatial memories, creating what's called a memory palace or method of loci. This technique exploits a fundamental truth about how your brain works. Spatial memory is ancient, powerful, deeply embedded in neural architecture that evolved to help organisms navigate physical environments, remember where food was found, avoid places where danger lurked. The method works through systematic association. You imagine a familiar place, your childhood home, your current residence, a route you walk daily, and mentally place items you want to remember at specific locations along a path through this space. To recall the information, you mentally walk through the space, encountering each item at its designated location. The spatial structure provides organization. The journey provides sequence, and the vivid imagery makes each item memorable. Memory champions who can memorize hundreds of random digits or the order of multiple shuffled card decks use variations of this technique, demonstrating that with proper method, human memory capacity vastly exceeds what ordinary experience suggests. The reason this works relates to how memory evolved. For ancestral humans, remembering spatial layouts meant the difference between finding food and starving, between returning home and being lost, between recognizing familiar territory and wandering into danger. Natural selection strongly favored organisms with good spatial memory, gradually building neural systems specialized for encoding and retrieving spatial information. These systems, primarily the hippocampus and surrounding regions, are remarkably powerful, capable of storing detailed maps of environments, remembering specific locations and their contents, navigating efficiently through complex spaces. When you use the memory palace technique, you're hijacking these ancient spatial systems, repurposing them for modern needs. Instead of remembering where berries grow, you remember points in a speech. Instead of recalling the location of water sources, you recall items on a shopping list. The neural machinery doesn't know or care what information it's storing. It simply does what it evolved to do: encodes spatial locations and their associated contents with remarkable fidelity. Modern neuroscience has confirmed that the memory palace technique genuinely engages spatial memory systems. Brain imaging studies show that when people use this method, their hippocampus activates as if they're actually navigating through physical space, even though they're sitting still with eyes closed, mentally walking through an imaginary palace. The brain treats the imagined space as if it were real, encoding memories in the same neural substrates that would store memories of actual physical navigation. As you lie here tonight, notice that you don't need to remember anything particular. Don't need to construct mental palaces or encode information for later retrieval. Tonight is about releasing memory's grip, about letting information flow through without holding on to it, about allowing the constant work of encoding and retrieval to pause. Your spatial memory systems can rest, can stop mapping and navigating, can simply be still. The palace of your room is familiar enough, known enough, that you don't need to actively remember its layout. You can simply exist within it, held by its familiar boundaries, requiring no mental effort to know where you are. Breathe deeply and let your mental palace be empty tonight, a clear space with nothing that needs remembering, nothing requiring attention or encoding. Let memory rest, and let your eyes grow heavy, trusting that memory will return when needed tomorrow. Still, tonight there is only rest, only the gentle dissolution of the need to hold anything in awareness. Patient as stone, deep as still water. Human beings possess a remarkable and sometimes troublesome capacity. We can think about our own thinking, observe our own observing, be aware that we are aware. This self-awareness, this reflexive consciousness, distinguishes humans from most other species and creates both extraordinary possibilities and unique forms of suffering. You can plan for the future because you can imagine yourself in future scenarios. You can learn from the past because you can reflect on previous experiences and extract lessons. You can make deliberate changes because you can observe your own patterns and choose different responses. But this same capacity allows you to worry about how others perceive you, to criticize yourself harshly, to get trapped in recursive loops of thinking about thinking about thinking, spiraling away from direct experience into abstract self-evaluation. Psychologists distinguish between different levels of self-awareness. Basic self-awareness, recognizing yourself in a mirror, knowing that you exist as a separate entity, emerges in human children around 18 months and appears in a few other species, including great apes, elephants, dolphins, and magpies. But humans develop much more elaborate self-awareness, including autobiographical self, the sense of having a continuous identity across time. Metacognitive self, the ability to reflect on your own mental processes. And social self, the capacity to imagine how you appear to others and to care about this appearance. This elaborate self-awareness creates what some philosophers call the curse of consciousness, the ability to anticipate death, to recognize your own insignificance in cosmic terms, to imagine countless ways things could go wrong, to compare your actual self to idealized alternatives and find yourself wanting. Animals without this reflexive awareness simply live, responding to immediate circumstances without existential dread, without self-consciousness, without the peculiar human capacity to make yourself miserable through abstract thought about yourself. Yet self-awareness also enables transcendence of immediate circumstances. You can delay gratification because you can imagine future consequences. You can maintain integrity under pressure because you can observe yourself and ask whether your actions align with your values. You can grow and change because you can notice patterns in your behavior and deliberately work to modify them. Self-awareness creates the possibility of genuine autonomy, of being guided by chosen principles rather than just immediate impulses, of authoring your own life rather than simply being lived by circumstances. Meditation traditions often work with self-awareness in interesting ways. Some practices involve cultivating meta-awareness, being aware that you're aware, noticing when attention has wandered, observing thoughts and emotions without getting absorbed in them. Other practices aim to go beyond self-awareness entirely, to rest in pure awareness without the sense of being a separate self who is aware, dissolving the subject-object duality that usually structures experience. Both approaches recognize that how you relate to self-awareness matters more than whether you have it. Tonight, as consciousness dims, notice how self-awareness fades. The constant monitoring of how you're doing, whether you're comfortable, what you're thinking, what it all means, this gradually quiets, loosens, dissolves. In sleep, especially deep sleep, self-awareness disappears entirely. There's no one there monitoring, no observer watching the experience, no self-evaluation of how things are going, just processes occurring without the reflexive loop of awareness being aware that self. This dissolution is not frightening, but liberating, a nightly release from the burden of self-consciousness, from the exhausting work of being someone who knows they are someone. Let self-awareness soften now. Let the monitoring relax. Let the observer rest. You don't need to watch yourself falling asleep. Don't need to evaluate how well you're relaxing. Don't need to be conscious of being conscious. Let the layers of reflexive awareness peel away like petals falling from a flower, each layer releasing, each level dissolving, until what remains is too simple to be called awareness, too fundamental to be called self. Breathe and let your eyes grow heavy, surrendering self-awareness to the darkness that asks nothing and needs no observer. Your emotions feel personal, unique, and arise from your particular circumstances and personality. Yet, the basic emotional systems are ancient, shared across all mammals, built on neural architecture that evolved hundreds of millions of years ago. When you feel fear, when joy bubbles up, when sadness weighs on your chest, when anger burns, you're experiencing states that your distant ancestors experienced, that mice and elephants and whales experience in their own ways, that emerged through natural selection because they solved crucial survival problems, patient and fundamental as breathing. Neuroscientist Jacques Panksepp identified 7 basic emotional systems that appear to be hardwired in mammalian brains: seeking, rage, fear, lust, care, panic, grief, and play. Each system involves specific brain regions, specific neurotransmitters, and specific behavioral patterns that activate in response to particular triggers. These systems are not learned but built in, part of your biological inheritance, though they're certainly shaped and refined by experience, by culture, by the particular circumstances of your life. The seeking system, driven primarily by dopamine, creates the motivated curiosity that propels organisms to explore, to search for resources, to investigate possibilities. This system makes exploration feel rewarding, makes novelty interesting, and keeps you engaged with the world rather than passive and withdrawn. When this system is underactive, apathy and depression result. When overactive, it can manifest as manic searching, unable to rest, driven by insatiable curiosity or desire. The rage system activates when goals are blocked. When you're constrained or frustrated, it creates the urge to overcome obstacles, to fight against restrictions, to assert yourself forcefully. This system served ancestral organisms by helping them compete for resources, defend territory, and resist predators. In modern life, the same system activates during traffic jams, during bureaucratic delays, during any situation where you feel powerless or prevented from doing what you want. The fear system responds to immediate threats, triggering fight or flight responses, heightening vigilance, and creating the urge to escape or hide. This system has kept your ancestors alive for millions of years, helping them avoid predators, recognize dangers, and respond quickly to threats. In modern life, it still serves protective functions, but often activates in response to psychological rather than physical threats, creating anxiety about social evaluation, financial security, health concerns, and existential questions. These emotional systems don't ask permission before activating. They respond automatically to triggers, initiating cascades of physiological and behavioral changes before conscious awareness even registers what's happening. By the time you consciously feel an emotion, your body has already begun responding. Heart rate changed, muscles tensed or relaxed, hormones released into bloodstream, facial expressions shifted, posture adjusted. Emotion is fundamentally embodied, arising from the coordination of brain, body, and situation, not from abstract mental states. Understanding emotions as ancient algorithms, as evolved response patterns shaped across eons, can change how you relate to them. They're not weaknesses to overcome or failures to feel certain ways. They're information systems, providing data about how your nervous system is interpreting current circumstances, offering guidance about potential responses. Fear says, possible danger, be careful. Anger says, obstacle present, consider asserting yourself. Sadness says, loss occurred, withdraw and conserve energy. The emotions themselves aren't problems. Problems arise when you can't access emotional information, when you over-identify with emotions as your entire reality, or when you act impulsively on emotional urges without considering consequences. As you rest tonight, notice whatever emotions are present without judging them as good or bad, appropriate or inappropriate. Each emotion is an ancient voice, a message from systems older than language, older than humanity itself, trying to tell you something about your current state, your needs, your relationship with the world. Listen with curiosity rather than judgment, and then let the emotions flow. Let them shift and change, and eventually settle as you move towards sleep. Emotions are like weather, constantly changing, ultimately beyond direct control, but not permanent, never permanent. Breathe and let your eyes grow heavy, allowing the emotional weather to be whatever it is, patient as the ancient systems that generate feeling itself. There exists a state of consciousness, rare and precious, where time seems to stop, where self-consciousness disappears, where you become completely absorbed in what you're doing, where action and awareness merge into effortless engagement. Psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi spent decades studying this state, which he named flow, trying to understand when it occurs, what produces it, and why it feels so deeply satisfying. Flow represents perhaps the optimal form of human experience, fully present, fully engaged, functioning at your best without strain or struggle, the gap between challenge and skill perfectly balanced. Flow occurs when you're doing something at the edge of your abilities, difficult enough to require full attention, easy enough that success remains possible. If the challenge far exceeds your skill, anxiety results. If skill far exceeds challenge, boredom emerges. But in that narrow band where challenge and skill match, where you're stretched but not overwhelmed, flow becomes possible. The activity must also have clear goals and immediate feedback, allowing you to constantly adjust performance, to know moment by moment how you're doing, and to stay engaged to continuous responsiveness. During flow, the sense of separate self temporarily disappears. You're not thinking about yourself, not monitoring how you're doing, not worried about how others perceive you. There's just the activity, the doing, the complete absorption in the present moment. Time distortion often occurs. Hours pass in what feels like minutes, or conversely, time seems to slow down as you notice details that normally escape attention. The experience feels effortless, despite requiring intense concentration, natural despite peak performance, joyful despite serious focus. Brain imaging during flow states reveals interesting patterns. Activity decreases in the prefrontal cortex, a phenomenon called transient hypofrontality, reducing the self-monitoring and analytical thinking that normally runs constantly. The default mode network, usually active during self-referential thinking, quiets down. Meanwhile, networks involved in focused attention and motor control show heightened activity and coordination. The brain becomes more efficient, using less overall energy while achieving better performance, like an engine running smoothly at optimal efficiency. Flow states can occur during many activities: sports, art, music, writing, surgery, teaching, conversation, even video games. What matters is not the specific activity, but the relationship between challenge and skill, the clear goals and immediate feedback, the complete absorption in present moment action. Some people report experiencing flow rarely, while others structure their lives to maximize flow opportunities, choosing work and hobbies that regularly create these conditions, seeking the deep satisfaction that flow provides. Interestingly, while flow feels effortless during the experience, it typically requires initial effort to achieve. You must push through resistance, overcome the initial reluctance or difficulty, and persist until skills warm up and engagement deepens. Many people give up too early before reaching the flow state, mistaking initial resistance for a sign that the activity isn't right for them, not realizing that flow typically emerges after sustained engagement, not immediately upon beginning. The memory of flow experiences often motivates continued engagement, even through difficult periods. Athletes endure punishing training because they remember flow states during competition. Artists persist through frustration because they've experienced flow during creative breakthroughs. The memory of complete absorption, of time stopping, of self disappearing into pure doing, carries enough value to justify the struggle of getting there, providing meaning that transcends immediate pleasure or external rewards. Tonight, you're not pursuing flow, but its opposite, the complete release of goals, of challenges, of the need to do anything at all. Flow requires engagement. Sleep requires disengagement. Flow dissolves self through absorption in activity. Sleep dissolves self through the cessation of activity. Both states offer relief from self-consciousness, but through opposite paths. Rest now in the knowledge that tomorrow might bring opportunities for flow, for those precious moments of complete absorption, but tonight is for the equally precious state of complete rest, of doing absolutely nothing, of allowing consciousness itself to dissolve. Breathe and let your eyes grow heavy, releasing all goals, all challenges, all striving, patient and still as stone. You were never meant to face life alone. Across millions of years of primate evolution, across hundreds of thousands of years of human existence, your ancestors lived in groups, relied on others for survival, shared resources and protection, and provided childcare. The human nervous system evolved in this social context and continues to expect it to function best when embedded in supportive relationships, to struggle when isolated. Recent psychological research has formalized this understanding in social baseline theory, which proposes that the brain's default assumption, its baseline state, is that you're surrounded by others who can share burdens, offer help, and provide comfort. When this social baseline is unavailable, when you're isolated or unsupported, your nervous system treats this as an emergency condition, activating stress responses, even when no immediate threat exists. Studies supporting this theory reveal fascinating patterns. When people face stressful situations alone versus with a supportive companion, their physiological stress responses differ dramatically. Blood pressure stays lower, cortisol levels remain more moderate, and amygdala activity is reduced when others are present. Simply holding the hand of someone you trust while anticipating a painful stimulus reduces pain perception and decreases activity in pain-processing brain regions. The presence of trusted others literally changes how your brain processes threat and challenge, making difficulties more manageable without requiring any overt help. Just presence, just connection, just the implicit message that you're not alone. This social baseline extends to mental effort as well. Tasks require less cognitive resources when you can potentially rely on others. If you're navigating a complex environment alone, your brain must maintain heightened vigilance, track all potential threats, and make all decisions independently. But when you're with trusted companions, vigilance can be distributed, decisions can be shared, and cognitive load can be divided. The efficiency gains are substantial. You simply function better, think more clearly, cope more effectively when embedded in supportive social networks. The theory helps explain why loneliness is so damaging to health. Chronic loneliness isn't just emotionally painful. It creates physiological stress, weakens immune function, increases inflammation, raises blood pressure, disrupts sleep, and accelerates aging. The body treats prolonged isolation as a crisis, maintaining emergency readiness that's exhausting when extended across months or years. People die younger when chronically lonely, experience more physical and mental illness, and recover more slowly from illness or surgery. The health impact of loneliness is comparable to smoking or obesity, yet it receives far less attention as a public health concern. Conversely, strong social connections powerfully protect health. People with rich social networks live longer, recover faster from illness, show greater resilience to stress, and report higher life satisfaction. The protective effect is dose-dependent. More connection, better outcomes, and appears across diverse measures of well-being. Marriage, friendship, community involvement, and regular social contact all contribute, with the quality of relationships mattering more than quantity. A few close, supportive connections provide more benefit than numerous superficial acquaintances. The pandemic of the early 2020s created a massive natural experiment in social isolation, forcing billions of people into prolonged periods of reduced social contact. The mental health consequences were severe and widespread. Depression and anxiety skyrocketed, substance abuse increased, and suicide rates climbed in some populations. Even people who considered themselves introverted, who generally preferred solitude, found extended isolation difficult. The deprivation revealed how much subtle social contact we normally experience and depend on. Casual conversations with baristas, nods to neighbors, presence of others in public spaces. These small moments of connection add up, providing a social baseline that supports well-being in ways mostly invisible until absent. Tonight, as you rest alone in darkness, you're temporarily separated from the social baseline that usually supports you. But the separation is chosen, bounded, and temporary. Tomorrow, you'll reconnect, will resume the social interactions that make human life sustainable and meaningful. For now, you can rest in solitude, knowing that connection awaits, that you're not permanently isolated, but taking necessary private time for restoration. Even in solitude, you carry with you the internalized presence of others who matter to you, the memories of connection that continue to provide comfort even when the people themselves are distant. You are more connected than you feel in this moment, more embedded in relationship than physical solitude suggests. Breathe deeply and let your eyes grow heavy, trusting that the social baseline will be there tomorrow, that connection is not lost but merely paused, that you can safely rest alone tonight because you're surrounded by relationships in the larger pattern of your life. Patient as stone, held by invisible threads of connection even in darkness. In modern life, you are constantly bombarded by stimuli competing for attention. Notifications, advertisements, conversations, tasks, worries, possibilities. The sheer volume of information available vastly exceeds your capacity to process it, creating a constant need for selection, for filtering, for deciding what deserves attention and what should be ignored. This situation is historically unprecedented. For most of human existence, information was scarce, attention rarely contested by simultaneous demands. Now, information abundance has created attention scarcity, making focused attention a valuable and increasingly rare resource. Research on attention spans reveals concerning trends. Measurements of how long people can focus on a single task before becoming distracted or switching to something else have been decreasing over recent decades. Some studies suggest the average attention span has dropped from 12 minutes to 8 minutes, though these measurements are difficult and contested. What's clear is that technology, particularly smartphones and social media, has trained habits of constant switching, of checking notifications, of seeking novelty at intervals measured in seconds or minutes rather than hours. This pattern of fragmented attention carries costs. Every time you switch tasks, there's a cognitive cost called switching cost. Time and mental energy required to disengage from the previous task, reorient to the new one, and reload relevant information into working memory. These costs seem small for individual switches, but accumulate across the day, creating significant drains on cognitive resources. Moreover, deep work, the kind of sustained, focused engagement that produces creative insights, complex problem solving, or high-quality output, requires extended periods of uninterrupted attention, typically at least 30 to 60 minutes. If you're switching tasks every 8 minutes, you never enter the deeper states where the best work happens. The fragmentation also affects memory formation. Information processed during interrupted attention is encoded less well than information processed with sustained focus. You're less likely to remember what you read while simultaneously checking your phone than what you read with undivided attention. The constant partial attention that characterizes modern life creates experiences that wash over you without being fully processed, without leaving lasting traces, contributing to the sense that time is passing rapidly, but you can't remember what you actually did. That life is rushing by without being fully lived. Yet, attention capacity is not fixed. Like a muscle, attention can be trained, strengthened through practice. Meditation, particularly practices that involve sustaining attention on a single object like breath, literally changes the brain's attention networks, increasing gray matter density in prefrontal regions involved in attention control, improving the ability to notice when attention has wandered and redirect it, and reducing mind wandering during tasks requiring focus. Even brief daily practice, 10 or 15 minutes, produces measurable improvements after several weeks. The environment also matters enormously. Attention follows the path of least resistance, gravitating toward whatever is easiest, most novel, most emotionally compelling. If your phone is visible and notifications are enabled, attention will be repeatedly captured by incoming messages. If you're trying to read, but a television is playing nearby, your attention will drift toward the movement and sound, creating environments that support sustained attention, removing distractions, establishing clear boundaries between work and leisure time. Using tools that block digital interruptions dramatically increases capacity for deep focus without requiring greater willpower. Some researchers suggest that the problem isn't that individual attention spans have decreased, but that we're attempting to sustain attention across too many simultaneous streams. Your brain has substantial capacity for sustained attention, but that capacity is finite, and modern life asks you to divide it across more objects than evolution prepared you to handle. The solution isn't necessarily to increase attention capacity, though that's valuable, but to radically reduce the number of things competing for attention, to create simplicity and singularity of focus rather than managing complexity and multiplicity. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, notice how good it feels to release the burden of divided attention, to stop managing multiple streams, to let the fragmentation of awareness dissolve into singular focus on rest. You don't need to attend to messages, don't need to track tasks, and don't need to maintain awareness of multiple concerns. There's just breath, just body, just the gradual dimming of consciousness, singular and simple, and utterly without competing demands. Rest in this simplicity, this rare gift of undivided awareness, knowing that tomorrow will bring back the complexity, but tonight offers the profound rest of singular focus dissolving into no focus at all. Breathe and let your eyes grow heavy, releasing all that fragments attention, surrendering to the unity of rest, patient as stone, still as deep water. Music predates written language, predates civilization, reaches back through human history to a time before anyone can trace, touching something fundamental in consciousness, creating responses that feel almost magical in their power and immediacy. A particular melody can transport you instantly to a memory from decades ago. A rhythm can make your body want to move without conscious decision. A harmony can bring tears to your eyes without a clear reason, touching emotions directly, bypassing rational analysis. Understanding why music affects you so profoundly reveals deep truths about brain organization, about emotional processing, about the connections between sound and meaning that evolution has built into your nervous system across millions of years. Music engages more brain regions simultaneously than almost any other human activity. When you listen to music, the auditory cortex processes the sounds themselves. Motor regions activate in synchrony with rhythms. Memory systems retrieve associations. Emotional centers respond to harmonic structure. Language areas process lyrics, if present, and attention networks coordinate the whole experience. This widespread activation partly explains music's power. It touches nearly everything at once, creating integrated experiences that engage your whole self, rather than just isolated cognitive functions. The emotional power of music relates to how melodies and harmonies create and resolve tension. When a musical phrase ends on a note that feels unresolved, that doesn't complete the expected pattern, your brain registers this incompletion, creating subtle psychological tension. When the phrase finally resolves, landing on the expected note or chord, relief floods through, creating a miniature emotional arc. Complex music creates and resolves many such tensions simultaneously across different timescales, generating rich emotional experiences through the architecture of expectation and fulfillment. Your brain predicts what should come next based on patterns absorbed from lifetime exposure to music in your culture. And composers exploit these predictions, sometimes fulfilling them, sometimes violating them, creating the emotional journey that makes music compelling. Music also synchronizes groups. When people sing or play music together, their breathing synchronizes, their heart rates align, and their brain activity shows coupled patterns. This physiological synchrony creates a psychological connection, fostering the sense of unity and shared experience that makes music central to religious ritual, military marching, protest movements, and celebrations. Music brings people into literal physical coordination, aligning not just their movements, but their internal physiological rhythms, creating a temporary fusion of separate individuals into a coordinated whole. Some researchers propose that music evolved as a mechanism for social bonding, serving the same functions as grooming in other primate species, but more efficiently, allowing many individuals to bond simultaneously rather than in pairs. Others suggest music emerged as a byproduct of language evolution, exploiting auditory processing systems that developed for linguistic communication. Still, others argue music has no specific evolutionary function, but rather exploits multiple systems that evolved for other purposes, creating experiences that feel meaningful and powerful, even though music itself didn't drive natural selection. The debate continues, but regardless of origins, music's impact on human psychology is undeniable. Personal memories often link strongly to music. A song popular during your adolescence can instantly evoke the emotional atmosphere of that time, can return you psychologically to who you were then, and can resurrect feelings you haven't accessed in years. This happens because music provides a rich retrieval cue, encoding multiple features: melody, harmony, rhythm, lyrics, the emotional state you were in when you heard it, the social context that together create powerful associations. When you hear that song again, years later, all these associated elements activate, pulling memories forward that might otherwise remain inaccessible. Tonight, you might notice music playing in your mind, songs arising spontaneously, melodies drifting through awareness without invitation. This internal soundtrack is normal, the brain's auditory systems continuing to generate patterns even without external stimulation. Much as visual systems generate dreams during sleep, let whatever music arises simply play, without trying to control or stop it. The melodies will eventually fade as consciousness dims, the internal concert gradually quieting as you descend toward deeper sleep, where even music dissolves into silence more profound than any rest between notes. Breathe deeply and let your eyes grow heavy, releasing into the silence beneath all sound, the stillness from which music emerges and to which it returns. Rest in that silence, patient and complete, older than any melody, deeper than any rhythm, the fundamental ground of all sound and all silence, eternal and unchanging. Pain seems like it should be straightforward. Tissue damage sends signals to the brain registers pain proportional to the damage. But the reality is far more complex, more variable, more influenced by psychological factors than this simple model suggests. Two people with identical injuries can experience wildly different pain levels. The same person can experience different pain from the same stimulus depending on context, expectation, attention, emotion, and meaning. Pain is not a passive readout of tissue state, but an active construction by your nervous system, shaped by multitudes of influences, changeable in ways that seem almost miraculous once you understand the mechanisms involved. We've touched on pain earlier, but its malleability deserves deeper exploration. Consider the phenomenon of pain gates, the discovery that non-painful input can reduce pain perception by competing for the same neural pathways. This is why rubbing a bumped elbow reduces pain, why distraction helps, and why competing sensations can provide relief. The spinal cord contains gates that determine which signals reach the brain, and these gates can be opened or closed by various influences. Descending signals from the brain can close the gates, preventing pain signals from ascending. Activity in large diameter sensory fibers can close the gates, explaining why gentle touch or pressure reduces pain. Attention profoundly affects pain perception. In one striking study, when people's attention was absorbed by a demanding cognitive task while receiving painful stimulation, they reported much less pain than when fully attending to the stimulus. And brain imaging showed reduced activity in pain processing regions. The pain signals were still arriving, but the brain processed them differently, depending on whether attention was directed toward them. This explains why injuries sometimes go unnoticed during high-stress situations. Soldiers wounded in battle, athletes hurt during competition, only becoming painful later when attention shifts and the gate opens. Meaning also modulates pain. Pain experienced during childbirth, though intense, is often described differently than pain of comparable intensity from illness or injury. The meaning of the pain, bringing new life, changes the experience, makes it more bearable, gives it purpose that transforms suffering into something acceptable or even valued. Similarly, pain from exercise feels different than pain from injury, even when physiologically similar, because meaning differs, because one signals progress toward goals while the other signals damage. Chronic pain often involves neuroplastic changes. The nervous system becomes hypersensitive, amplifying signals and maintaining pain even after the original injury has healed. The pain system itself becomes painful, like a fire alarm that keeps ringing long after the fire is out. These changes can sometimes be reversed through various approaches: graded exposure to movement, attention training, reframing beliefs about pain, and medication that calms overactive neural pathways. The key insight is that chronic pain is often maintained by the nervous system's learned patterns rather than ongoing tissue damage. And patterns can be unlearned, slowly and gradually, through approaches that retrain the nervous system. Placebo effects in pain are remarkably powerful. When people believe they've received pain medication, pain decreases significantly, even if they received only sugar pills, and brain imaging shows genuine changes in pain processing regions, not just reports of less pain, but actual differences in neural activity. The expectation of relief activates the brain's endogenous opioid system, releasing natural pain-relieving chemicals. This isn't all in your head in the dismissive sense. The relief is real. The mechanisms are real. The brain genuinely changes pain processing based on expectation. Conversely, nocebo effects can increase pain. When people expect pain, pain intensifies. When they're anxious about pain, hyper-focused on it, and catastrophizing about what it might mean, pain worsens. The attention, the anxiety, the catastrophic thinking all open pain gates, amplify signals, and create more suffering than the tissue state alone would produce. This is why pain management increasingly includes psychological components, teaching people to relate differently to pain, to reduce catastrophizing, to maintain function despite pain, rather than avoiding all activity. Tonight, scan gently for any discomfort in your body: tension, ache, soreness, fatigue. Notice that the sensations themselves are just sensations, neutral data about the current state. The suffering comes from your relationship to the sensations, from wanting them to be different, from fear of what they might mean, from resistance and tension around the sensations themselves. What happens if you simply allow the sensations to be present without trying to change them, without adding layers of interpretation and resistance? Often, surprisingly, the experience softens, becomes more bearable, loses some of its sharp edges, not because the sensations changed, but because your relationship to them shifted. Breathe into any discomfort, sending breath to those areas like a gentle massage, like a kind attention that doesn't demand anything change, but simply acknowledges what is. Let your body rest as completely as it can, releasing tension where possible, accepting sensation where release isn't available. Trust that sleep will provide its own pain relief, its own restoration, that tomorrow you may feel different simply from having rested well tonight. Let your eyes grow heavy and surrender to the body's wisdom, to its capacity for healing and adjustment. Patient as all biological processes, gradual and thorough as stone being shaped by water across centuries. Perhaps the deepest question psychology confronts is also the most basic. What is consciousness? How does subjective experience arise from objective matter? Why does anything feel like something rather than just being mechanical information processing without inner experience? This is sometimes called the hard problem of consciousness, distinguishing it from easier problems like explaining how the brain processes information, forms memories, and generates behavior. Those problems are difficult, but seem solvable through neuroscience. The hard problem seems different in kind. Even if we completely understood the brain's physical processes, would we understand why those processes feel like something from the inside? Why is there an experiencer experiencing rather than just processes occurring in darkness? Various theories attempt to answer this question, none entirely satisfying, all pointing toward mysteries that may remain permanently beyond human understanding. Some philosophers argue that consciousness must be a fundamental feature of reality, present in some form at all levels, gradually becoming more complex in living organisms with nervous systems. This view, called panpsychism, suggests that even electrons have tiny glimmers of experience, that consciousness doesn't emerge suddenly at some threshold of complexity, but is always present, woven into the fabric of existence itself. Others propose that consciousness arises when information is integrated in particular ways, that the feeling of consciousness correlates with how much information a system integrates across its components. The integrated information theory suggests that consciousness is this integration itself, that systems with high integrated information necessarily have experience, while systems with low integration, even if they process lots of information, don't. By this account, your consciousness right now reflects the particular pattern of integrated information present in your brain, always changing, never quite the same from moment to moment. Still others suggest consciousness serves specific computational functions, creating a global workspace where information from different brain regions can be broadcast and coordinated, enabling flexible response to novel situations, allowing for planning and simulation of possibilities. By this functionalist account, consciousness emerges when the brain needs to coordinate information that wouldn't otherwise interact, when local processing isn't sufficient and global coordination is required. Yet all these theories struggle to explain why consciousness feels like something, why there's the qualitative, subjective dimension that philosophers call qualia, the redness of red, the painfulness of pain, the particular way happiness feels. You can imagine beings that process information, coordinate across brain regions, and integrate data, but do so in the dark, without any inner experience. Why aren't we such beings? What makes the difference between information processing with experience versus without it? Some philosophers suggest this question may be permanently unanswerable, that consciousness is inherently subjective, while science requires an objective third-person description, and that the gap between these perspectives can't be bridged by any amount of neuroscience. Others think the question will dissolve once we understand enough that what seems mysterious now will seem obvious in retrospect, like many other seemingly insurmountable problems that science eventually cracked. The debate continues, and probably will continue, for as long as conscious beings exist to debate it. What's clear is that your consciousness right now, whatever it is fundamentally, emerges from physical brain processes. Damage to specific brain regions changes consciousness in specific ways. Lesions to the visual cortex eliminate visual consciousness. Damage to certain frontal regions impairs self-awareness, and disruption to specific networks causes loss of consciousness entirely. Anesthetics work by disrupting neural communication, preventing the integration of information that consciousness seems to require. Sleep itself represents a natural variation in consciousness, with different sleep stages showing different qualities of awareness, different types of experience, and different relationships between neural activity and subjective state. The deepest mystery, perhaps, is not consciousness in general, but self-consciousness specifically, the sense that you are you, that there's a continuous identity persisting across time, that experiences belong to a singular self, rather than just occurring without an owner. This sense feels absolutely fundamental, undeniable, yet neuroscience reveals it as constructed, assembled from multiple processes, sometimes disrupted in brain disorders, where the sense of self fragments or disappears. The you that seems so solid and permanent is actually a fluid coalition of processes, a story told by the brain to itself. Useful, but not ultimately real in the way it feels. Some meditation traditions claim that with sufficient practice, you can directly observe the constructed nature of consciousness and self. can see moment by moment how experience arises from underlying processes and can rest in awareness that precedes and transcends the constructed self. Whether these claims are accurate remains debated, but they point toward the possibility that consciousness can be understood not just intellectually, but experientially, through careful attention to the very processes that create it. Tonight, as consciousness dims and sleep approaches, you have the opportunity to observe consciousness changing, to notice the transformation from waking awareness to sleep, to witness the gradual dissolution of self that happens every night. Usually, this transition occurs without observation. You're awake, and then suddenly it's morning, with no memory of the boundary being crossed. But sometimes, in the hypnagogic state, you catch glimpses of consciousness transforming, thoughts becoming dreamlike, logic loosening, sensory boundaries blurring, self-sense fading like fog burning off in morning sun. Notice this transformation with gentle curiosity, without trying to control or prevent it. Let consciousness do what it naturally does. Let the familiar sense of self soften and dissolve. Let awareness itself become less definite, less localized, less personal. You're not losing anything essential. You're releasing something constructed, allowing a nightly return to a state before and beneath the self, to awareness without content, to consciousness without construction. This dissolution is not death, but rest, not loss, but release, the temporary setting aside of the burden of being someone, of maintaining coherence, of constructing self moment by moment. Breathe, and let your eyes grow heavy, surrendering to the mystery of consciousness itself, to the inexplicable fact that anything feels like something, that you are here experiencing, rather than just processes occurring in darkness. Rest in that mystery, that fundamental wonder that precedes all questions and all answers. Older than thought, deeper than understanding, patient and eternal as the silence between stars. We've touched on habits before, but their formation deserves deeper exploration. Habits are the brain's solution to the problem of efficiency, how to accomplish necessary tasks without burning through limited cognitive resources, how to automate behaviors so attention can focus on novel challenges rather than repeating familiar decisions. The habit system operates largely outside conscious awareness, guided by different brain structures than conscious decision-making, following different logic, responding to different influences. Understanding this architecture reveals both why habits are so powerful and why they're so resistant to change, patient and persistent as water carving channels through stone across centuries. Neuroscientist Anne Graybiel discovered that habit formation involves a shift in neural activity from cortical regions associated with goal-directed action to the basal ganglia, particularly a structure called the striatum. When you first learn a behavior, your prefrontal cortex is highly active. You're consciously thinking about each step, making deliberate decisions, monitoring outcomes. But with repetition, activity gradually shifts to the striatum, and the behavior becomes chunked, multiple steps compressing into a single unit that executes automatically, requiring minimal conscious attention. This chunking creates both advantages and problems. The advantage is efficiency. You can brush your teeth while thinking about the day ahead, can drive a familiar route while absorbed in a podcast, can perform countless routine behaviors automatically, freeing attention for other tasks. The problem is that habitual behaviors become difficult to change because they're not under conscious control. You can decide not to do a habit, but in the moment, In the familiar context, the behavior often executes before conscious intention can intervene. You reach for your phone automatically, eat the snack without deciding to, and follow the familiar path without considering alternatives. A habit loop involves three components: cue, routine, and reward. The cue triggers the behavior: a time of day, a location, an emotional state, or a preceding action. The routine is the behavior itself, the sequence of actions that execute automatically once triggered. The reward is what the brain gets from completing the routine: pleasure, relief, satisfaction, or simply the completion of an expected pattern. The reward reinforces the loop, strengthening the connection between cue and routine, making the habit more likely to occur next time the cue appears. Changing habits requires understanding this loop structure. You can rarely just stop a habit through willpower alone. The cue will still trigger urges. The missing reward will create dissatisfaction, and the old pattern will likely reassert itself. More effective strategies involve keeping the cue and reward, but changing the routine, substituting a new behavior that provides similar satisfaction, and gradually retraining the circuit. Or you can avoid the cue entirely, changing your environment so the trigger doesn't occur, breaking the chain before it starts. Some habits stack together, with one habit's completion serving as the cue for the next. Your morning routine likely involves multiple stacked habits. Waking triggers getting out of bed, which triggers using the bathroom, which triggers brushing teeth, which triggers making coffee, and so on. Each behavior flows into the next without conscious decision, creating a long sequence that feels like a single, unified morning routine. This stacking makes habits efficient, but also means disrupting one habit can disrupt the whole sequence, creating confusion and requiring conscious navigation of what normally happens automatically. Keystone habits are those that trigger cascading changes in other behaviors. Exercise often functions as a keystone habit. People who start exercising regularly tend to also eat better, sleep better, be more productive, drink less alcohol, and even be more patient with others. The mechanism isn't fully understood, but keystone habits seem to create a sense of momentum, of being someone who makes good choices that generalizes across domains. Alternatively, they may improve mood or energy in ways that facilitate other positive behaviors. Context plays an enormous role in habits. Behaviors are cued by environmental features, so changing your environment disrupts habits effortlessly. If you always eat cookies that sit on your counter, removing them eliminates the cue, and the habit dies without requiring willpower. If you always check your phone first thing upon waking because it's on your nightstand, moving it to another room breaks the pattern. Environment design, arranging your surroundings to cue desired behaviors and remove cues for undesired ones, is often more effective than relying on self-control, which depletes with use and fails under stress. Tonight, as you perform your bedtime routine, notice the habitual quality, how behaviors flow automatically, how little conscious decision-making is required, how the sequence feels like one integrated whole rather than separate steps. This automaticity is your habit system working beautifully, making the transition to sleep smooth and natural. Appreciate how habits serve you when aligned with your goals, how they create ease and flow in daily life, how they allow consciousness to rest from constant decision-making. Let the routine carry you forward, trusting the path carved by repetition, patient as all patterns established across time. Breathe and let your eyes grow heavy, surrendering to the wisdom of habit to patterns older than conscious thought, reliable as the turning of seasons. For thousands of years, contemplative traditions have claimed that meditation practices change the mind in profound ways, reducing suffering, increasing compassion, clarifying perception, and revealing the nature of consciousness itself. Western psychology long dismissed these claims as unfalsifiable mysticism, but recent decades have brought meditation into the laboratory, subjecting it to rigorous scientific investigation. The findings confirm that meditation genuinely changes the brain in measurable ways, that regular practice alters neural structure and function, and that ancient contemplatives were describing real phenomena even if their theoretical frameworks differed from modern neuroscience. Meditation comes in many forms, but two broad categories have received most scientific attention. Focused attention meditation involves sustaining attention on a single object, breath, a sound, a visual point, and repeatedly redirecting attention when it wanders. Open monitoring meditation involves maintaining a broad awareness of whatever arises in experience without focusing on anything particular, simply observing thoughts, sensations, and emotions as they come and go. Both types produce changes, sometimes overlapping, sometimes distinct. Regular meditation practice increases gray matter density in several brain regions. The prefrontal cortex, involved in attention control and emotional regulation, shows structural changes in meditators compared to non-meditators, with the amount of change correlating with hours of practice. The hippocampus, crucial for memory and learning, also shows increased volume. The insula, which processes interoceptive awareness, the sense of your body's internal state, thickens with practice. These aren't temporary changes, but structural modifications, new neural tissue, permanent alterations in the brain's physical architecture. Functional changes occur as well. The default mode network, active during mind wandering and self-referential thinking, shows reduced and more controlled activity in experienced meditators. They can more easily quiet mental chatter, can sustain focus longer without attention wandering, and can observe thoughts without getting absorbed in them. The amygdala, the brain's alarm system, becomes less reactive, responding less intensely to stressors and quieting more quickly after activation. These changes persist outside of meditation itself, suggesting that regular practice recalibrates baseline neural function, creating lasting shifts in how the brain responds to experience. One striking finding involves the attentional blink, a momentary blindness to stimuli occurring shortly after detecting a target. If you're watching a rapid stream of letters and must identify two numbers embedded in the stream, you'll often miss the second number if it appears within about half a second of the first. Your attention blinks, briefly unable to process new information. But experienced meditators show reduced attentional blink, suggesting more efficient information processing, less getting stuck on previous stimuli, and more fluid attention that can rapidly shift without leaving residue. Pain processing changes with meditation practice. Experienced meditators report less pain from identical stimuli compared to non-meditators, and brain imaging shows different patterns of activation. Less activity in regions processing pain's emotional unpleasantness, more activity in regions associated with observational awareness. They seem to experience the sensory component of pain, but not the suffering component, separating the physical sensation from the emotional reaction, allowing pain to be present without creating distress. Compassion and empathy also increase with certain meditation practices, particularly loving-kindness meditation, which involves deliberately cultivating feelings of goodwill toward self and others. Regular practitioners show stronger activation in empathy-related brain regions when viewing suffering, along with a greater willingness to help in behavioral studies. The neural changes suggest not just cognitive understanding of others' suffering, but genuine emotional resonance, felt compassion, rather than just conceptual acknowledgement. The timeline for these changes varies. Some effects appear after just a few weeks of daily practice, reduced stress, improved attention, better emotional regulation. Structural changes require longer, months of regular practice before measurable changes in gray matter density appear. The most profound changes seem to require years or decades, suggesting that meditation is not a quick fix, but a long-term practice, a gradual training that slowly reshapes neural architecture, patient as all developmental processes. Tonight, you might apply some meditative awareness to the process of falling asleep. Rather than trying to make sleep happen, simply observe what's occurring. Thoughts arising and passing, sensations in the body shifting, consciousness gradually dimming. Watch without judging, without trying to control, without needing anything to be different from what it is. This observational stance, this witnessing awareness, is itself a form of meditation, a practice that can be applied to any experience, including the transition to sleep. Let your eyes grow heavy as you observe. Let sleep approach while you simply notice, maintaining awareness as long as it naturally persists, before finally dissolving into unconsciousness. Breathe and rest in observational presence, patient and still. And so, dear traveler, we arrive at the end of our journey through the landscapes of the mind, through the territories that psychology has carefully mapped across decades of patient research, across centuries of philosophical wondering, across millennia of human curiosity about the nature of consciousness and behavior and experience. We have wandered together through many rooms in the vast mansion of psychological understanding, touching on memory and emotion, learning and development, social connection and solitary reflection, the biology of the brain, and the phenomenology of lived experience. Each fact we've explored tonight is a gift from those who came before, researchers who devoted careers to understanding single phenomena, theorists who spent lifetimes developing frameworks for making sense of human nature, practitioners who learned through thousands of hours working with real people facing real struggles. The knowledge we've shared tonight represents an enormous collective effort, patient and thorough, extending across generations, building slowly, like a coral reef forming particle by particle in dark waters. But knowledge alone is not enough. What matters is how this understanding shapes your relationship with yourself, with others, with the experience of being alive. The facts we've discussed are not just abstract information, but invitations. Invitations to notice your own processes with curiosity rather than judgment. To recognize that much of what you experience is universal rather than uniquely your struggle. To appreciate the incredible complexity and beauty of the mind that allows you to know anything at all. As you drift now towards sleep, carry with you perhaps one or two ideas that resonated, that touched something in you, that offered a new way of seeing familiar experience. Let the rest fade, returning to the vast reservoir of knowledge from which we drew tonight, available if needed, but not requiring your conscious retention. What you need will stay. What you don't will dissolve like dreams upon waking, and that's perfectly fine. The purpose was never memorization, but the gentle occupying of awareness, the gradual quieting of the busy mind, the slow dimming of consciousness that allows sleep to approach. Remember, if this journey brought you peace, if these psychological truths offered comfort or insight, you can return here whenever you need, And you can help others find this refuge by subscribing to this channel, by leaving a comment, sharing what resonated with you tonight. Your engagement helps this content reach others who might benefit from these calm explorations of the mind. But for now, there's nothing more to do, nowhere else to go, nothing requiring your attention or effort. The day is complete. The night is here. Your body knows what comes next, has been preparing throughout this recording, gradually shifting toward the state that allows sleep to arrive. Trust this preparation. Trust the ancient processes. Trust that sleep will come in its own time, at its own pace, following rhythms established across hundreds of millions of years of mammalian evolution. Let your breath flow naturally, without controlling or directing it. Let your body sink more deeply into the surface beneath you, releasing any remaining tension, any subtle holding, any last vigilance. Let your thoughts drift like leaves on a slow-moving stream, appearing and disappearing without effort, without meaning, without requiring your attention. Let awareness itself begin to dim, like light gradually fading from the sky at day's end, gentle and natural and utterly without strain. You have learned much tonight about the mind, its capacities and limitations, its wisdom and its follies, its complexity and its simplicity. But now it's time to release all learning, all knowing, all understanding, and simply rest in the space before thought. The awareness that precedes and follows all content, the silence from which all words emerge and to which they return. Sleep well, dear traveler. Good night. And may your dreams be gentle, your rest be deep, and your awakening be refreshed